Hello, YouTube and YouTubettes. Here is Wrestling Part 4. And in this one, I'm going to talk about racism in the WWE. And I'm convinced that there is a bit of this in terms of having their top champion be an African American. Because there's only been one, that's Dwayne Johnson, who's actually half Samoan. And so I'm not going to take away the fact that he's half African American because he is. But still, there's been many African American stars in the WWE that some of them I don't think are top level, but some of them are. And every bit had the opportunity and should have been. And so I want to talk about that. The first one after Dwayne Johnson, it was Booker T. Now, I believe this was on Raw. I did see Booker T a bit on SmackDown back when I was watching that, but I didn't really see his feud with Triple H. And I've seen the WCW highlights, or documentary, so I've seen some of him there. And I think Booker T is great on the mic. He's a great performer. He's got a great look, and I think should have gotten that opportunity, and he did have the opportunity. And in the feud, Triple H is a heel and had a racist promo on Booker T. Now, that doesn't bother me because Triple H is supposed to be a heel. He's supposed to be a bad guy. But if you're going to do that, Booker T needs to win the match. But the fact that Triple H did that racist promo on Booker T and then Booker T lost basically tells me that that wasn't just a promo. That's really how Triple H and Vince McMahon thinks. So that would be my first one that I think was a no-brainer. Booker T was over with the crowd and was the babyface, had a racist promo put on him. He should have gotten the top championship. Now, I can't really speak much from 2005 to 2010 because I wasn't watching. Two that I'm aware of, I know Mark Henry was around, and I'll get to him. But Benjamin, I've seen bits of Benjamin. He doesn't seem like a top star to me. Bob Lashley, I didn't see him back then, but from what I've seen from him now, I'm not really, he kind of bores me. I briefly remember Ezekiel Jackson, and he seemed to have the look to be a top level superstar, but I can't really remember. It was brief in 2011, and then he was gone. It seemed like so I didn't see a whole lot of him, but I'd have to go and look at some of his stuff to see if he would have the promo or not. But Mark Henry in 2011, at first, at the beginning of that year, he was kind of a boring babyface, and then when he turned heel, he became one of my favorite heels. Just you could see the anger, just this monster. And it built up towards him having a feud with John Cena. And I believe he should have gotten the belt then. I think he had a match and lost, and then basically in tears announced his retirement. John Cena came out to shake his hand, and then he surprised everybody by lifting up John Cena and throwing him, and the crowd was going wild. And he goes, "I'm not done." And I think even if he lost that first match, I think that was an awesome promo, and he should have won the next one and gotten the top championship belt. So Mark Henry's another one. R-Truth. Now, I don't ever remember R-Truth being in the conversation for the championship, but he should have been. Not only should he have been once or twice, he should have been up to the level of John Cena and Randy Orton, in my opinion. I think he had the look, he had the performance, he was great on the mic, just he had everything. But he was kind of held in that mid-level, and I think that was wrong. And I didn't realize in 2011 he was already about 40 years old because I thought he was in his 20s, honestly. So he's one of those guys kind of like Chris Jericho and other guys in their Brock Lesnar, and that really holds together physically well. And so in my opinion, R-Truth should have been not only just once or twice, but should have been consistently in the top level. Now, I mentioned briefly in the last video David Otunga, and they didn't really do much with him. I mean, he had the lawyer character, and I think I would have chosen him to be the tag team partner of Damian Sandow as the intellectual tag team. But that's but I don't know. I never saw enough of him to really put him in the superstar status, but he had some potential there. Before I get into the New Day, because that's really where this is all leading, I will talk about some other minority groups, and a lot of other minority groups have had the top championship belt, so it's not quite as bad. But Rey Mysterio won it briefly in 2011, and then quickly lost it to John Cena, and I really didn't care for that. I wish he would have held it longer. Alberto Del Rio, I think, had the top belt for a while, and I think he was every bit of a top level heel, in my opinion. They didn't do a bad job with him, but I thought, he might have been a higher level than they were giving him. Shinsei Nakamura, I feel like, is a top level superstar, should be. So, Jinder Mahal, perhaps, although he hasn't really, maybe if you use him correctly, could be. So I'd have to look at the history to see how many of the other races have had the top belt. But if I recall, I know there's been obviously Hispanics and obviously Samoans. So in the women's division, I feel like it's a little more fair. I could be wrong, but I believe Sasha Banks, Naomi, and Ember Moon have all had the belt. I'd have to double check that. But if not, they all should get the belt. And so should, I think, Asuka has as well. She's a top level star, I believe. So it doesn't seem to be as prominent in the women's division or any of the other belts. So the New Day is who I want to focus on here. When they first started, I thought it was the silliest thing in the world. I thought it was cheesy. The whole gimmick was just ridiculous. I didn't really care for it. And the fans hated it too. And they were supposed to be these happy-go-lucky, soul singing, praise and worship leader was Big E, I guess, and they were supposed to be this babyface group, this really happy babyface group, but they were so cheesy that everybody hated it, and I hated it as well. But as heels, they really started to gel. They really started to get over, and I was really starting to enjoy what they were doing because they really got over the top with it. And it became more silly, and they really didn't hold back. And that's when people started to get it, and then they started to become a babyface again. And to me, that's kind of what they should have done with Roman Reigns, is make him a heel first and have him, run as a heel. And sometimes that's what helps get people to being baby faces again. So I think that's kind of interesting, the way they developed, how they were completely booed, but somehow just because they went way over the top with it, it worked. It became a very good gimmick. As other top teams, the Shield and the Wyatt family, the Shield especially, they've all been able to shine as single stars, and the Wyatt family to a lesser degree. But the New Day, for whatever reason, they haven't allowed them to break out, except for Kofi Kingston for a brief period. And I thought that was kind of weird. I do think, and I mentioned before, that Kofi Kingston should have become a part of the cruiserweight division to help build that up. This was around, I think the cruiserweight may have started in 16 or 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, but it was around the time that the New Day had already had a long run, maybe keep them together a little longer, but I feel like it was about time for them to move on to the next level to become individuals. Kofi Kingston, I felt in 2012 or 13, before the New Day began, was the time to really try to push him. And I think it would have been cool to have him win a Royal Rumble match, because every year he would do those crazy things, those acrobatics to stay alive. So I thought, that would be cool to have him win one. And the only one I didn't think was ready necessarily to be a top star is Xavier Woods, but I think you could have made him sort of a brat like Seth Rollins kind of heel, to where he needs either the authority or a big bodyguard to keep him winning matches or something like that. And maybe that would have been a good first step for him. But I think he has a lot of potential. He's great on the mic and everything. But the one guy I think that is ready now and has been ready for several years is Big E Langston. You know, when they decided to suddenly promote Kofi Kingston to fight for the belt, that was kind of cool because it was different, but I think it came out of nowhere, you know. It wasn't like he was getting really over with the crowd. It didn't seem like to me. They just suddenly had him fight for the belt. And they were kind of making this story that he was kind of like what Daniel Bryan was, kind of this undersized guy, which was going for it. And Daniel Bryan was mocking him, which made him a good heel because he went through the same thing himself. But I didn't mind that too much, except that I felt that Big E was the guy that should have been not going for the SmackDown belt, but for the Raw belt. And maybe that's happened in the last year because I haven't been really watching. But really, you know, the New Day was together for several years, and they've been overdue for several years to become individual stars. And Big E, I think, has been overdue for years to be a top level star. And of all the African American males now, he is the guy. You know, unless you want to include R-Truth in there, but he's already in his 40s. He's had a long career, and I wouldn't mind him being at the top right now either. But he's been around for a long time, and I don't know if they're going to. But Big E still has that opportunity. So, what do you think? Do you think Big E Langston is a top level superstar? Leave the comments in the section. Who are other African American male WWE stars that you think should have gotten the top belt?